Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into a concept I think we could all use a little more of self-love.
It's
We'll
true.
be looking at Kamal Ravikant's really powerful book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And what's so interesting about this book, I think, is that it wasn't written, from some like serene mountaintop retreat.
Right.
It comes from a place of real struggle.
Yeah. What's so fascinating about this is that Ravikant, the author, was going through a really, really dark time when he wrote this. He had health issues, business was bad, even the loss of a close friend. He was really at a point where he needed something, like a lifeline.
Right.
And that's kind of where this whole idea for the book came from.
Yeah, so he wasn't exploring this, just academically. He was really living it out of necessity.
Exactly, yeah. And his core idea, and it's surprisingly simple when you think about it, is to love yourself with the same intensity that you would use to save your own life, if you were in real danger. And that's what he did. It became his anchor, so to speak. And the remarkable thing is, it actually worked. Like, he started seeing and feeling these positive changes, both physically and mentally.
Wow. Okay, I'm intrigued already. But why love? There's so many other words out there in the self-help world, like, acceptance, self-compassion.
Right.
Why does he specifically hone in on love?
I think that's a really great question. Ravikant believes that that the word love has a unique power. Because think about it, we understand love on a primal level, even as babies. It goes beyond just like our conscious thoughts. It really taps into something much deeper, our subconscious.
So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts. You're saying it's about tapping into a deeper, almost like biological response.
Exactly, yeah. And to do that, to cultivate this deep self-love, Ravikant, developed these techniques. And one of the most powerful that he talks about is this idea of a mental loop.
I've heard of thought patterns, but what's a mental loop exactly?
Yeah. So it's kind of like creating like a well-worn path in your brain. Every time that you have a thought, especially if it's repeated with a lot of emotion behind it, that pathway becomes more and more ingrained. And for most of us, let's face it, a lot of those loops, those thought patterns that are kind of running on autopilot are negative or self-critical, right?
Yeah.
So Ravikant decided, you know what? I'm going to create a new loop. I'm going to create a dominant loop based on this phrase. I love myself.
So he just kept repeating this phrase, even if he didn't fully believe it at first.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, it's so simple, yet so powerful.
And this is where it gets really interesting. He describes it as like literally rewiring his brain by consciously choosing this new loop, this new pathway. He was leveraging this power of what's called neuroplasticity, which is basically, the brain's ability to change and adapt over time. And this really simple practice, like repeating, I love myself, actually led to some pretty amazing positive changes in his life.
It's almost like hacking your own mental software.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're saying this works, even if you don't initially believe it. That's where the real magic happens, right?
Exactly. And it's about overriding those deeply ingrained negative patterns that we all have to some extent. And this connects to another really powerful technique that Ravikant uses, which is the window analogy.
Okay.
So he compares focusing on self-love to cleaning a dirty window.
Yeah.
You don't fight with the dirt directly.
Right.
You just wipe it away, and that lets the light in.
So you're saying that fighting negativity head on can actually be counterproductive? Because I know, for me, I've always struggled with like trying to force those negative thoughts out of my head.
It's a common trap, yeah. But what we're doing is we're actually giving those thoughts more power when we try to suppress them.
Yeah.
So what you do instead is you just focus on, filling your mind with self-love. And as you do that, the negativity will naturally kind of fade away as the light shines through.
I love that analogy. It's so simple and elegant. So how do you actually cultivate this light? Like, did he have specific practices?
Absolutely. So Ravikant, he developed this really easy 7-minute meditation that anyone can do. He would sit comfortably, put on some calming music, and he'd visualize this like light from the universe kind of flowing into his body.
Music. I don't usually associate music with meditation. What's the purpose of that?
Yeah, I know. It's an interesting addition. But he says it acts as like an anchor. It helps kind of gently guide him into that meditative state. And then as he was inhaling, he would repeat to himself, I love myself. And then as he exhaled, he would release any negativity. And he stresses the importance of like being gentle with yourself during this process. There's no forcing, there's no judgment.
Okay. I can see how that would be really soothing and accessible.
Yeah.
But what about dealing with negativity from other people? Like, how do you maintain this self-love when you're faced with, negativity externally?
That's a really good question. Ravikant has a really brilliant tool for this. It's a single, powerful question. And the question is, if I loved myself truly and deeply, would I let myself experience this? Pretty direct, right?
It is direct, and it really gets right to the point. It's like a litmus test, almost, for your actions and your thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of forces you to pause for a moment, reconnect with your own well-being, and really evaluate the situation.
It's almost like a reset button for your emotional state.
Yeah.
So, he's giving us these practical techniques, but did he also talk about the impact of self-love? Like how it actually showed up in his life?
Yeah, he does. And there's one story that really sticks out to me. It's about this woman that he met who was just radiant. She was full of joy. She was beautiful. And he asked her, "What is your secret? Like, what is it?" And she simply said, "I'm in love."
Oh, interesting. Do you think he meant, like, romantic love?
Not necessarily. I think it was more about the love that she had for herself. And that's what Ravikant realized. The source of her radiance wasn't external. It was this like inner wellspring of self-love. And that's when it hit him. We don't need external validation to feel good about ourselves.
Hmm.
We can create that radiance from within.
Okay, so that kind of challenges the whole idea that we need someone else to complete us.
Exactly. And that's a big one, right? And it's a really important distinction. And this whole experience actually led Ravikant to explore even deeper techniques, like his 5-minute mirror meditation.
Mirror meditation.
Yeah.
I'm curious. What's that all about?
So he would stand in front of a mirror, look into his own eyes, and repeat the phrase, "I love myself."
Okay, that sounds pretty intense. Like, to look into your own eyes for 5 minutes straight?
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind that?
He believed that it was a very powerful way to communicate this truth to himself in this deep, inescapable way. Like when you look into the eyes of someone you love and express your feelings directly to them,
Right.
it bypasses all that mental chatter and creates like a really powerful emotional connection. But in this case, it's with yourself.
It's amazing how he takes these, like, traditional self-love concepts
Hmm.
and really pushes the boundaries with his techniques.
Yeah, he was constantly experimenting, searching for what worked best for him. And this brings us to another fascinating discovery that he made about the nature of memory itself.
Wait, what does memory have to do with self-love?
So Ravikant realized that our memories aren't actually fixed, they're malleable.
Yeah.
The state of mind that we're in when we recall a memory can actually change how we experience it.
So if you're feeling down and you recall a painful memory, you're just reinforcing that negativity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you can recall that same memory from a place of self-love, it can actually lessen its negative hold over you.
Hmm.
So we actually have the power to reshape our past by changing how we relate to it in the present.
That is incredibly empowering. It means we're not just prisoners of our past experiences. We can actually rewire those memories, make them less painful.
Exactly. And that ties into how he learned to deal with fear. He talks about this NLP expert named Richard Bandler. This guy had a really radical approach to curing phobias.
Okay, I love a good unconventional therapy story. Tell me more about this Richard Bandler character.
Well, imagine this. A shower room filled with snakes.
Yeah.
And not just like rubber snakes,
Yeah.
live cobras.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm already getting chills picturing that. But why such an extreme approach? Like, was he just trying to, like, shock his patients out of their phobias?
It's more than just shock value. What Bandler understood was that phobias thrive on these distorted perceptions of reality. So by flooding the room with snakes, both real and imagined.
Wait, so the patient was hallucinating snakes on top of the real ones?
Yes.
That's wild.
Right. But by challenging this patient to distinguish between, like, the real snakes and the hallucinations, something shifted. He realized that his fear was actually warping his reality.
So he was separating the actual threat from the exaggerated fear in his mind.
Exactly. And that's a key takeaway here. We have so much more power over our thoughts and feelings than we realize. And Ravikant, he took this concept and he developed what he called light switches for dealing with fear. So when fear would start to creep in, he would just remind himself, it's just a hallucinated snake, or not useful, or not real.
So basically, he was interrupting those negative thought patterns by using those phrases to kind of remind himself of the truth. It's
Yeah.
like a mental jujitsu move.
Exactly. And another example of this comes from James Altucher, who's a writer and entrepreneur. He uses the phrase not useful to interrupt his own negative thought patterns.
Mm.
It's simple, but it's effective. It's a way to regain control.
Yeah. It's a great reminder that we don't have to be victims of our own fears. But did Ravikant ever struggle with maintaining this like constant state of self-love, especially, when life was actually going well?
He did. He admits that when things were going smoothly, he'd sometimes kind of coast,
Mm.
let the self-love practice slide a little bit.
Yeah.
He figured, hey, everything's fine. Why bother?
Yeah, I can relate to that. When things are good, it's so easy to just kind of take them for granted. Forget how hard you work to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. But he realized that this complacency was actually preventing him from reaching even higher levels of fulfillment.
Ah.
It's a reminder that self-love isn't a one-time fix, it's an ongoing practice, like exercise or meditation.
It's about showing up for yourself consistently, even when you don't feel like you need to. But did he ever talk about, like, the deeper reasons behind that tendency to coast?
He did, and through his self-love practice, he started to uncover some hidden beliefs that were driving his behavior. For example, he realized that he had this deep-seated belief that real growth could only come from intense, difficult, and challenging situations.
Wow, that's a pretty profound insight. So he was essentially programmed to equate growth with suffering, even if it came at a cost.
Exactly. And he believes that a lot of us have similar hidden beliefs, often rooted in, childhood experiences or cultural conditioning.
Mhm.
They operate in the background, influencing our choices without us even realizing it.
It's like we have this unconscious software running in the background of our minds.
Exactly. And self-love acts like a spotlight, illuminating these hidden corners of our minds. And once we can see them, we can start to question those beliefs and choose a different path.
That's where the real transformation begins, right?
Yeah.
So, did he talk about how this self-love impacted his relationships with others?
Oh, yeah, it had a really profound impact. As his self-love deepened, he naturally became more open and accepting of others. It's like the love he had for himself overflowed into his relationships.
It's like that saying you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to fill your own cup first
Mm.
before you can give to others.
Exactly. He stopped needing that validation or approval from others because he had it within himself. And that shifted the whole dynamic of his relationships. He was coming from a place of wholeness, not neediness.
That's a powerful shift. And how did this new perspective impact how he dealt with, like, conflict or negativity from others? Did he just become a doormat?
Not at all. He actually found he could respond to negativity with more grace and composure. He would pause, access that self-love, and then choose a constructive response rather than just reacting defensively or impulsively.
So it's not about tolerating bad behavior. It's about having the inner strength to respond from a place of love and wisdom.
Precisely. And he understood that other people's negativity often stems from their own pain and insecurities. So by approaching them with compassion, he could often de-escalate the situation and foster a more harmonious connection.
It's inspiring. It's not just about, personal happiness. Self-love can actually create a ripple effect, making the world a more compassionate place.
Absolutely. And it all starts with ourselves.
Well, this has been such a rich exploration of self-love, both the theory and the practical application. Yeah. What stands out to you from everything we've discussed so far?
What strikes me is just the simplicity of Ravikant's approach. He's not overcomplicating things with, these complex theories or these elaborate rituals.
Right.
He really boils it down to the essence,
Yeah.
the relentless practice of loving yourself.
And it's a good reminder that we don't need fancy programs or expensive retreats to experience self-love. It's available to all of us right here, right now.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a practice that we can integrate into our daily lives, no matter how busy we are.
It's about those like small, consistent choices that we make to nurture our well-being and create a sense of self-worth.
Yes, it's about prioritizing self-care, setting healthy boundaries, speaking kindly to ourselves. It's about recognizing our inherent worthiness and treating ourselves with the same love and respect that we would offer to someone we deeply cherish,
Hmm.
and trusting that as we cultivate this self-love, everything else will fall into place.
Right.
Our relationships, our work, our sense of peace and joy, it will all benefit.
What a beautiful message. It's a reminder that self-love isn't a luxury. It's essential for a truly fulfilling life,
Yeah,
like an antidote to all the self-doubt and negativity that surrounds us.
I agree. It's a call to action, an invitation to reclaim our power and step into our full potential.
It's about like embracing our imperfections, celebrating our strengths, and choosing to love ourselves unconditionally.
Beautifully said. Just as we are, it's a journey worth taking, even if it's one step at a time. What about you? Is there anything that you're particularly excited to try in your own life?
I'm really intrigued by that mirror meditation.
Yeah.
The idea of like looking into my own eyes and expressing that self-love so directly, it's really powerful.
It's powerful. It's about connecting with your true essence, bypassing all the mental barriers and self-doubt.
Yeah, exactly. And I also want to explore, his idea about rewiring memories through self-love. I think it has the potential to really heal old wounds and free us from the past.
It's powerful stuff. A reminder that we have much more control over our thoughts and feelings than we realize.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a truly insightful deep dive. But before we wrap up part one, I want to leave our listeners with a question to ponder.
I love it. What question do you have for them?
If you truly loved yourself unconditionally, what would you do differently in your life?
That's a great question to sit with. It challenges us to really look at our choices, see if they're aligned with our deepest values.
Exactly. It's an invitation to step into our authenticity and create a life that really reflects who we are. A life lived from love, not fear. We'll be right back to continue our deep dive.
So, as we kind of delve a little deeper into Ravikant's journey with self-love, one thing that really strikes me is how much he emphasizes this idea of surrender.
Surrender. It seems a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it? I mean, usually we associate self-love with, like, empowerment and taking control, not surrendering.
Right. But Ravikant's perspective on surrender, it's a little bit nuanced. It's not about, giving up or resigning yourself to mediocrity.
Right.
It's more about surrendering to the present moment, accepting what is, letting go of the need to, control everything.
So, like, releasing resistance, allowing life to just kind of unfold naturally.
Exactly. He realized that a lot of his suffering, his struggle, was actually coming from resisting what was happening, trying to, desperately force things to go his way.
Yeah. It's like that saying, what you resist persists. When we're fighting reality, we're just creating more tension, more struggle.
Exactly. And this applies not just to external situations, but also to our inner world as well. Like when we resist our thoughts and emotions, when we judge ourselves harshly for not being perfect, we create this battle within ourselves.
Yeah. It's like we're constantly at war with ourselves.
Yeah.
Trying to suppress or deny parts of who we are.
Yes, and that inner struggle, it drains our energy, prevents us from experiencing true peace and joy.
So how does surrender tie into self-love then?
Ravikant realized that surrender is actually an act of self-love. It's about accepting ourselves fully, imperfections and all. It's about, letting go of that need to be perfect and embracing the messy, beautiful reality of who we are.
That's giving ourselves permission to just be human, to make mistakes, to not have all the answers.
Exactly. And it's in this space of surrender, of radical acceptance, that we can truly begin to heal and grow.
We kind of create a safe haven within ourselves, a place where we can be vulnerable, authentic, without judgment.
Beautifully put. And this inner sanctuary of self-love becomes our anchor, our source of strength, no matter what challenges we face out in the world.
It makes me think of that story Ravikant tells about the monk who found peace by simply saying yes to everything that happened in his life.
It's such a powerful story.
Yeah.
It reminds us that our attitude towards life really does play a huge role in our experience. When we approach life with openness and acceptance, even difficult experiences can become opportunities for growth and learning.
It's about shifting from a mindset of scarcity and fear to a mindset of abundance and possibility.
Exactly. And it's this shift in perspective that allows us to actually see the beauty and the magic in the everyday moments.
Ravikant's journey is just such an inspiring reminder that self-love, it's not a destination, it's a practice. It's something that we cultivate day after day, moment by moment, through our thoughts, our actions, our choices.
It's about showing up for ourselves with kindness, with compassion, and, just a fierce commitment to our well-being.
Yeah, it's about being our own best friend, our own biggest cheerleader, our own, most loving companion on this journey we call life.
Beautifully said. And, as we cultivate this deep and abiding love for ourselves, we naturally become a source of love and inspiration for others.
It's like a ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
Spreading outward from our own hearts, creating a more loving and compassionate world, one person at a time.
Exactly. And I think that's the most beautiful and powerful message of all. So we've been talking about how self-love can really transform, our relationship with ourselves and even with others. But I'm curious, how does it impact our beliefs?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because Ravikant, he discovered that self-love can actually help us uncover and challenge our hidden beliefs. The ones that are kind of running in the background, shaping our experiences without us even realizing it.
It's like becoming aware of the operating system that's running our lives, right?
Yeah, Exactly. And a lot of times those beliefs aren't even serving us.
Yeah.
He realized he had this deep-seated belief that real growth could only come from intense, difficult experiences.
So it's like he was subconsciously drawn to struggle.
Yeah, and that belief was kind of rooted in his past, like his experience in Army boot camp. He had come to associate growth with hardship.
It makes you wonder, like, how many of us are operating on similar beliefs without even realizing it?
Oh, I think so many of us. Yeah.
Beliefs that might be holding us back.
Absolutely. And that's the power of self-love. It helps us shine a light on those beliefs so we can examine them, decide if they're truly serving us.
So instead of just accepting those beliefs as truth, we can question them and choose a different path.
Exactly. And for Ravikant, this realization was a huge turning point. He began to see that growth didn't have to be painful, that
Yeah.
it could actually come from a place of love and acceptance.
It's such a liberating idea, isn't it? It's like opening yourself up to a whole new way of experiencing growth.
Totally. It's about recognizing that we're already worthy. We don't have to prove ourselves through struggle and suffering.
This reminds me of what we were talking about earlier, about surrendering to the present moment,
Huh?
accepting what is.
Yes, it's all connected. Surrendering is a form of self-love.
Mm.
It's about saying yes to ourselves,
Yeah.
with all our imperfections and embracing the journey exactly as it unfolds.
It's about letting go of the need to control everything and trusting that we're exactly where we need to be.
Yeah, and that trust, that radical acceptance, that's where true freedom lies.
This has been such a profound exploration of self-love and its transformative power.
Yeah,
Ravikant's journey is a testament to the fact that self-love isn't just like some fluffy feel-good concept. It's a powerful force that can really change our lives.
absolutely.
It's about taking responsibility for our own well-being, nurturing our inner world, and creating a life that's aligned with our truest selves.
And in doing so, we become beacons of love and inspiration for others,
Right.
right? It's like that ripple effect, radiating outward, making the world a more beautiful place.
What a beautiful message to end on. We've reached the end of our deep dive into love yourself like your life depends on it. I hope this exploration has, sparked something within you, a desire to cultivate more self-love in your own life.
It's a journey worth embarking on. Remember, you are worthy of love, starting with the love you give yourself.
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep loving yourself fiercely.